This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, let's talk WWE, everybody. It is the current state of WWE here on this Wednesday, May 15th, 2023, as we have another event in just a couple of weeks from Saudi Arabia, and that name of the event is Night of Champions. We're going to talk about the Tag Team Championship match that I would presume is going to main event the show. We'll see if Brock and Cody Part 2 does, but I would imagine if Roman's in this match, it'll be the main event automatically for the Tag Team Championship, and we're going to talk about that and maybe some other things with Anthony DeMarco. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Good, man. Glad to be back. And, you know, Night of Champions, first time I think ever they've kind of promoted this pay-per-view as a big pillar of a pay-per-view, for lack of better terms. And it's nice to see a pay-per-view or a PLE being held in Saudi Arabia that isn't just the prototypical crown jewel. Like, I think they've done the Elimination Chamber there. Obviously, we had the one-off of the greatest Royal Rumble, but I do think it's cool that they're starting to bring over some older pay-per-views and traditional pay-per-views and do it in the Saudi Arabia setting. But it's crazy to me because we just finished off Backlash, what is it, it's 8 days ago now, and in 13 days or 12 days, actually, we're going to have a second pay-per-view, which has been a rarity under Triple H. I find the pay-per-views have been more spaced out, and not saying that's a bad thing. I think it makes them feel more special. And as we talked about last time or the week before, I think the biggest thing under Triple H has been that the pay-per-views have all felt important, even the B-level ones. And like the B-level pay-per-views under Triple H, unless I'm forgetting one, have been Backlash and Extreme Rules. And both of them were successful, in my opinion. And I'm still a bit skeptical about what the card is going to be for Night of Champions. Obviously, we don't have a World Championship match or a WWE Championship match. I don't think we have something set for the U.S. title yet. We're going to find out the number one contender to Gunther's Intercontinental Championship. But I have to say that, and I'll pitch it to you here, does it not feel that every pay-per-view under Triple H really does feel special?
It has, and it only has after the fact. People go into a lot of these B pay-per-views, and myself included have been guilty at times of kind of being down on the card. They haven't done a great job of promoting it, you know, whatever the case may be. But then you come out of it and you're thinking to yourself, wow, that was a damn good pay-per-view. And a lot of that has to do with the stars themselves, the wrestlers themselves, who have been able to tell awesome stories inside the ring and make up ground for sometimes lackluster storytelling on the mic and things that are out of their control. So, overall, Triple H has been very good with pay-per-view PLE execution, and that's been one of his staples, and I would expect no different here at Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia. So they go from Puerto Rico to Saudi Arabia, quite a distance there. And before we get into the tag team title match and what you think could possibly happen here, maybe what's going on, is it more splitting of the bloodline, whatever it may be, are you surprised, or maybe not surprised, disappointed? What's your emotion, I guess, as to Roman Reigns not defending his belt for the second PLE in a row, and probably not until the PLE at the end of June, which at that point we're going on nearly at the end of June, probably closer to 3 months by the time Roman Reigns defends his belt again?
Well, I mean, it's more of the same, right? Like, one of our biggest criticisms of Roman Reigns' title run, and I think both of us, for the most part, have been, you know, proponents of Roman Reigns, and there have been, you know, criticisms along the way. But I think overall, both you and I have enjoyed his run as WWE Undisputed Champion. But the manufactured, you know, just artificially built at times, like, months that have been just tacked onto his reign have, in my opinion, kind of diluted it. You know, he hasn't defended the championship since WrestleMania, and that's, 6-7 weeks ago now. And if he does, in fact, not defend it at Night of Champions, because I suppose there's still a chance that he does. I mean, it's just going to really feel a bit bizarre. Like, and maybe I'm a traditionalist, but like, I remember the days that they used to say when you were a champion, you had to defend the title within 30 days, like at least once a month. And I thought that really kept the integrity of the title and the rule. And I'm not trying to say that Roman Reigns' run has not felt special. It has. It's one of the best things WWE has ever done in years. More so the overall bloodline story from more of a macro scale. But at times, Roman's run in a vacuum has felt very manufactured and artificial because they just skip pay-per-views. They go months without defending it. And especially if he doesn't defend it at Night of Champions, where the entire gimmick of the pay-per-view was built on the fact that every title in the company was defended. In my opinion, it would be a very bad look, not just for Roman and his run, but for the pay-per-view as well.
That's funny. I didn't think about that. Night of Champions has always been billed as, you're right, every championship is on the line. It is Night of Champions. But I don't think this year that they will push that that tagline as hard as they have in years past, because everyone's going to say, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, every championship except which one? Yeah, so I think they'll back off of that particular tagline. But yeah, if Roman doesn't defend the belt here, and I don't think that he will, given they have 2 weeks to build, there's very unlikely going to be an opponent coming out of the woodwork. Roman's opponents have been built up. You usually have 4 or 5 weeks to build somebody up. That's not going to happen here. That means, as I look at the PLE schedule, that the next event is once again across the pond here in London. So Money in the Bank, but it's July 1st. Whoa. So if we don't have a Roman Reigns title defense on Saturday, May 27th, we have another 5 weeks, until, again, as you said, inflating the number of Roman Reigns' championship run to, my God, probably, well over 1,000 days, let's be honest. It's going to go into the 1,100, 1,200. We can get into that discussion at some other point of how long we eventually think it's going to go, but this does seem to be the point where they get past 1,000, they get into July, and Money in the Bank in London really is the next chance, guys, that we have any opportunity for someone to beat Roman Reigns in London. See, this has been the problem all along, as you mentioned, and one of the few criticisms of what has been an otherwise brilliant run, a historic run, is these major gaps in title defenses, and you just keep looking 3-4 months out to the next real opportunity is this. We shouldn't have to be looking out quarter of a year until the next time we have a potential, depending on who his opponent even is, in London at Money in the Bank. So July 1st, guys.
Yeah, and at on July 1st, you would presume, and I think it was one of your listeners who sent in on the mailbag that suggested this, and it makes a lot of sense, that it's maybe Sheamus is a contender to face off against Roman for the Undisputed Championship. And look, we know that Sheamus has a snowball's chance in hell of coming out as the champion, but it will be a fun match. And there's a lot of unfinished business there back from Survivor Series when the Brawling Brutes got involved against the Bloodline. So I do think that'd be a really fun program. It would be a fresh program. We haven't seen Sheamus versus Roman Reigns since 2015, I want to say. I think Sheamus was the one who quickly cashed in on Roman Reigns, the Money in the Bank, when Roman Reigns won his first ever WWE Championship at Survivor Series 2015. And then Sheamus cashes in and aligns himself with the Authority. So there's a lot of stuff that you could play off of there. But we know that if it's Sheamus, Roman Reigns is walking away with the championship. And then beyond that, it just feels like there's so many other guys to get to before you kind of have to start really think about dethroning Roman Reigns. I have to feel that it's going to be Bobby Lashley, one of the contenders. I don't think Bobby Lashley will be the guy to dethrone Roman Reigns, but I certainly think that they are going to have a lengthy program, more likely than not. You still have AJ Styles, who they're quickly trying to elevate to the back of the top of the card, evident by his win on SmackDown in both the triple threat and coming out of the semifinal. I don't think he's going to win the World Heavyweight Championship, but they're clearly trying to fast track AJ Styles back to a main event path. So, to kind of answer the second part to your question, I think that I mean, SummerSlam maybe, but I feel like the SummerSlam match will probably be Bobby Lashley versus Roman, and I don't think that Bobby is the guy to dethrone Roman Reigns. I think what you're probably looking into 2024 before we can seriously start thinking about Roman losing that championship.
Well, see, that's what we're doing here. And this is what we did last year, and we did this the year before, where, okay, guys, well, when we get to, post-Mania, then we can look to, maybe SummerSlam. And now what we've already done is we've already leapfrogged Night of Champions. We've leapfrogged Money in the Bank. We're now looking to August 5th. So now we're looking out, 3 months nearly from, I know it's May 15th, but close to 3 months. We've already pushed this back to maybe it's SummerSlam, because Money in the Bank, as I'm talking about it, well, it's a big pay-per-view in a big stadium in the O2 Arena in London. It'll be raucous. It'll be fun. But you're looking at it going, well, why would we have him drop it there when SummerSlam's a bigger event? So then you go push it to SummerSlam. And then if he loses or retains at SummerSlam, what's everyone thinking? Well, they got him to SummerSlam. The next event is Survivor Series, but by the time you get to Survivor Series, we're already talking about WrestleMania, and they get to the Rumble. It's already the road to WrestleMania, and you gotta bring him to WrestleMania as champion, right? So it all is like this. It's like this vortex, this constant cycle of gravitating Roman somehow into WrestleMania as the champion. And you just go from pay-per-view to pay-per-view. He doesn't work a good handful of them during the year, so you're always looking out 3 months. Then you look to SummerSlam, and it's just this constant cycle of adding, as we talked about, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months artificially onto his run. And I know what people are going to say. That's how it was back in the old days when they had territories and the NWA champion would come into town. They wouldn't defend the belt. Look, it's 2023 now, okay? I understand what used to happen, and sometimes what happened, what used to matter back in those days, I think should be brought back today, like the lack of true selling, slowing down in the ring. I think there are some traits I'd like to bring back, but this is something that is not going to be something that is going to go over well, I think, at the end of the day, with fans who are just kind of looking at this and saying the same things you and I are like. Come on. I mean, I could defend the belt. I could be a 6-month champion here if I defended the belt once or twice in 6 months. And I'm not crapping on Roman Reigns. Good for him for getting this schedule and making millions of dollars. Good for him. I am jealous of that schedule. He's earned it. I'm not crapping on his schedule or angry at him. But as a viewer, you're just like, come on, man. Really? Like, have you really been a champion for 1,000 days? So anyway, circling back to this Night of Champions event, I do have to ask you, they haven't mentioned anything about the 1,000 days falling on May 27th yet. Do you think they'll bring that up at all? I mean, how can they not? It just hasn't been a part of the story yet.
Well, Paul Heyman has brought up in passing, and the weird thing is that they only have 2 SmackDowns left to really promote this thing. And it really feels like we're like on a treadmill here getting to Night of Champions. Like, there's a lot of matches that aren't even set, presuming that they do want to go with the traditional gimmick of every title being defended. I'm hesitant, especially with the women's titles and all that, but I guess we'll see when we cross that bridge. But I mean, I feel like they're going to have to try and promote it, but how are you going to promote it without having the WWE Championship defended or his undisputed title? And one thing I thought is, like, do you put his titles on the line too? Like, if Sami and Kevin win, whoever scores the victory becomes the undisputed champion as well. But then that would kind of tip their hand, kind of really making it obvious that Solo and Roman are going to be coming out with the titles. So I don't think that they'll do that. Well, I guess my question to answer your question would be, do you think he's going to defend the undisputed championship?
It's a fine line. Do I think at the end of the day that he's going to? No, I don't. But as we just talked about, how do they get to the exact 1,000th day and not do anything with his championship, or maybe to just acknowledge it at the end of the show, or the announcers just kind of mention it in passing, and then they have a huge celebration the following week on SmackDown, wherever they are on Friday. Maybe that's what they do, and they don't draw too much attention to the fact that he didn't defend it on the day that he probably should have. So I don't think that he does defend it because he's not somebody that would, at least in character, do double duty. He doesn't look like he would. He would have the wise man negotiate him out of that. I think it is all about the tag team titles. And my question to you then is, we keep bouncing questions here. I got to ask, ultimately, do you think that Roman and Solo could win the tag belts? To me, I had a dilemma with myself on my show last night because I can see both sides of this. What do you ultimately think?
I think it'd be pretty damn cool if they did, because I think a lost art is having a world champion also as a tag team champion. Like, there's two that stick out to me. And the first one is Chris Benoit when he won the tag team titles with Edge in 2004 when they beat La Resistance. And the second is Batista winning it with Rey Mysterio. And obviously, going back 22 years, you have the two-man power trip where both of them were dual champions. And not dual champions in the sense of like unifying the tag team belts or unifying the world titles like we've seen over the last 12, 13 months. But like actually holding two separate titles, two titles of different classes. Like when Ultimate Warrior won the WWF Championship when he was already the Intercontinental Champion. And I think it's something that would really add an interesting layer to the Bloodline story. And, Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman said it, following the match at WrestleMania against Cody Rhodes, where they're just getting started telling this story. And I got to give them credit. I remember just around this time last year, you and I were talking about how much longer could they go with this? It's getting boring. It's getting this. And Sami Zayn really injected some life into it. But I have to give them credit again. I thought that it would be a downward turn when Sami Zayn's story came to an end. And that wrapped up, 3 months ago now? And they're still really keeping this thing going. Solo's involvement has been amazing. I think that his ability to add that stoic killer type of presence has really made this interesting here, and that how Roman Reigns has really kind of singled him out and really defined him as his right-hand man. And if they win the tag team titles, I'd be more interested to see how Roman's going to carry all the belts to the ring, to be honest with you. But aside from that, on a more serious note, I love Sami and Kevin, and I still think there's a lot of tread left on that tire. But given what they're telling us, the storytelling rather, with the Bloodline, I think that there's a very strong case to be made that Roman and Solo should come out as champions.
Well, I have the answer for you. I think the wise man is going to be sweating by the time he gets to the ring. He's going to be exhausted because Paul Heyman's he carries the Universal for him or the WWE, and I think he will assign Paul Heyman as part of the tag team championship holder. I mean, because having Roman Reigns carry 4 belts to the
imagine
has that even? I don't think that's ever happened. Now, I understand it'd be 2 separate championships, but 4 belts representing them, which still to me makes no sense. If they're unified, create 1 damn belt. I mean, I'm over they're dual champions. Well, if it's 1 championship, then don't have 2 belts. I'm over that. But imagine the visual of Roman Reigns holding up 4 championship belts, 2 in each hand. That would be a hell of a visual. And I actually think there's a great story to tell there. It would keep Roman Reigns' undefeated streak alive, because don't forget, Roman Reigns is still undefeated, at least in singles action. I know he lost the match on New Year's Eve when John Cena came back and was a tag team partner with Kevin Owens. I understand that, but I think having Roman Reigns victorious here would just add another layer to his run. But I guess the argument against it would be, well, if he wins, then he's going to be an absentee tag team champion. As fun as it would be to see it happen and the fans lose their minds over oh my God, now he's got another championship he's going to run and hide with. He has Solo who's there on a weekly basis, but if Solo doesn't have Roman, he's not going to defend the belt without Roman. But also the other side of this is, you didn't allow Sami and Kevin to have a great run with the belts either. You're kind of cutting them short. They just won it 6-7 weeks ago at WrestleMania. there is some life still there. I mean, there's still some gas left in the tank on that run. It's not like we're at SummerSlam going, well, a WrestleMania to SummerSlam run is a pretty good run. We're not even there yet. I mean, we're not even halfway to SummerSlam yet. So there's a lot of opponents, especially with new tag teams from NXT coming in. I know we have Pretty Deadly. We have the End of Sheer from NXT coming in. Heel tag teams. I think it would behoove WWE, again, arguing the other side, is to have Kevin and Sami, who are a professional's professional, in the ring working with these guys, and then it would give Kevin and Sami new guys to work with post Night of Champions, helping build new stars that you wouldn't get otherwise if Roman is never there to defend the belts. It's just another championship he takes back into his cave and comes out every 3 months to defend it. So that's the argument against it, and that's why I was having such a damn hard time deciding, if I was given ultimate power, which way I would go.
Here's the thing about Roman being a part-timer. I absolutely agree that I think that if you're the world champion of your respective brand, you shouldn't have to have matches weekly on Raw or SmackDown, depending what show you're exclusive to. Because you've made this point all along. Like, the whole concept of being a fighting champion, is that not, like, I don't know if counterintuitive is the right word, but, like, it makes no sense. Being the champion should give you perks, and one of those perks should be conserving your energy, not having useless matches. Champion's prerogative whether or not he should have a weekly match. I 100% agree with that. Like, to be honest, I think one of the most special the title ever felt was the first time Brock Lesnar won it after coming back to WWE, when he won from Cena in 2014. I know he was an absentee champion for a lot of the time, and he should have defended it at every pay-per-view. But the fact that Brock became the first champion to not really defend it every single Monday night, or not even defend it, but not have matches every Monday night, in my opinion, it made the title feel more special. And the way I think about it, I don't know if you feel the same way here. Like, that's not the part of Roman that bothers me. I think the fact that he rarely fights on SmackDown is actually a cool thing. The issue for me is that he'll go 4 or 5 months without even appearing on SmackDown, and he's not even a lock to fight at every pay-per-view.
Yeah, if I was to choose one thing, as we talked about earlier in the show, it's just simply that, I mean, I don't even mind so much that it's okay, fine, he takes a little time off after WrestleMania and all that, but this is a regular thing throughout the year. That is, and he's negotiated a hell of a contract. Good for him. But as a fan, it's frustrating because he doesn't defend it at every pay-per-view. Now he's going 2 pay-per-views, and he's going to go from what was it? When was April 1st, right? I think April 1st was WrestleMania. We're going to go to July 1st until he defends it again.
3 months.
Presumably.
3 months.
3 months. Now, again, barring some crazy thing where he has to defend it on SmackDown or some wild thing happens at Night of Champions, which, again, those are all unlikely. He's going to go 3 months exactly until he defends the belt again. I am all for, and I will argue to the death that the fighting champion stuff is nonsense, and it actually devalues the belt. It's disrespectful to the championship. All for just looking like you're not a coward, at the expense of also looking stupid, that you're going to allow just anyone. You worked your whole life, presumably, to get to this point, to hold the belt, to say that you've reached the top of the mountain, to just allow anyone who just walks on the roster or attacks you and reward them with a championship match. No, it makes you look stupid. It devalues the thing that you are telling us you value the most, all for what? The appearance that you're not a coward? No. To me, the respect and value of the belt comes first. But again, this is not something you can argue with WWE, because they're all about making sure the baby faces never ever look like cowards. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and that's not my issue on it. Like, I hope that you don't have Seth Rollins fighting singles matches every single week when he presumably wins the World Heavyweight Championship.
Yes.
Because as much as I like Seth Rollins, one of the more actually, to be honest here, how brutal of an era was it? And coincidentally, it was when you and I first started doing this show together. But how terrible of a time was it when you had Rollins as Universal Champion on Raw as a babyface and Kofi Kingston as WWE Champion on SmackDown?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, the nightmares of nightmares. Yeah. I mean, that babyface run for Seth, that was the one that it was just awful, right? He beat Brock at WrestleMania, and it was just brutal, right? If that's what I recall, right? I mean, him as that forced babyface did not work. Until he turned heel in the AOC and all that we've talked about, which was just awesome. But yeah, I mean, I don't need to go down the Kofi Kingston, dark hole of just, anger of how that whole run went. And then he didn't care that he lost the belt, which made it 10 times worse. Anyway.
Yeah.
But back to, yeah. So, Roman Reigns, look, do I think he's going to end up winning if someone right now, again, I haven't seen the build because I don't have a crystal ball for the next 2 weeks on SmackDown, but if the event was tomorrow, I would venture to guess that they probably do win the belts. I don't know how long that they'll win the belts for, because that is something that, to take the tag team championship away from the tag team division, is it really worth is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't know, because then what is everyone fighting for that isn't able to even get an opportunity because Roman's there every 4 weeks? I mean, that's the other problem. I understand the value of not being there all the time, not defending it all the time, but there does come a breaking point where it's like, all right, dude, like you gotta be here a little bit more. I would venture to guess they probably do, but also the other side is if they don't, it could be because of the Usos, and maybe the Usos come out to try to quote unquote help them. And it looks like they're trying to help them, but they end up costing them the match. I mean, that's the other strong argument against this, because it eventually it seems like the Usos are on the outs with the Bloodline.
Yeah, that's the angle that I think a lot of people are assuming that it's going to go, because it would make the most sense, especially that the fact that you have Sami Zayn in there, who's been trying to turn Jey Uso specifically on Roman Reigns for several months at this point. And I think that it's just going to open up a massive can of worms to continue telling the story if you have the Usos inadvertently cost Solo and Roman. And then it begs the question, is this the end of the line for Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens' involvement with the Bloodline? Like, it kind of has to be at this point, no?
Yeah, this has to be. And they were very clear at the very beginning of their alliance that their mission, their joint mission, was to take down every member of the Bloodline, or to at least disintegrate, break up the Bloodline, and they could have that accomplished at Night of Champions if that solution plays out, where Jey maybe does purposefully cost Solo the matchup, or, there's just no question where Jey ends up, or Jimmy ends up, or both, purposefully, it's not even a question, costing the Bloodline, where there's a turn on Roman and Solo. And then you're right, mission accomplished. Kevin and Sami move on. And, win, lose, or draw, they should, because it's been fun. It's been a good ride. And Sami, of course, hit his peak at an Elimination Chamber, and ever since then has predictably been on a downslide, although still very relevant and very popular. It's just time for them to move on. And as I mentioned earlier, move on, if they're still champions, to other tag teams they can help build, other new heel tag teams to help bolster the tag team division. So, that's absolutely a strong possibility as well.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Like, WWE's tag team, I feel like their division, rather, is getting pretty strong, and on both sides. And I wonder that, like, you may want to split those tag team titles eventually, because you look at Monday Night Raw specifically, and you have the Viking Raiders, you have who did they just bring up from Monday? Or maybe I'm thinking it was SmackDown that got all the tag teams. I actually think it's SmackDown that has the tag teams, because you have the Brawling Brutes, Pretty Deadly? Is that what they're called?
Pretty Deadly, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, then you have obviously the Usos are still there. Braun Strowman and Ricochet went to Monday Night Raw. I don't know. Like, I think that you have enough tag teams now, even if you're not fans of their characters or whatever. You have some good working tag teams at this point. You have the OC as well that just went to SmackDown. Like, I mean, I think that you can maybe eventually split those tag team titles. Like, I know you've always been a proponent of having one tag team champion that floats between both brands, but I'm starting to wonder, because of how much investment that Triple H has put into increasing more tag teams, which he has, still has work to do on the women's side of things, but the men's, I feel like he's really done a good job to work on elevating the amount of tag teams they have. I'm starting to wonder if maybe it'd be best to eventually split those tag team titles.
I wouldn't hate it. And I mean, I was advocating for an Undisputed Championship, which I love when they did it, only because the depth of the tag team division was bad. And when I have, or I see, you know, one or two active tag teams, prominent tag teams on both shows, it's like, well, what do we have two championships for, you know? And the same thing goes for the women's division. The women's tag team division, you know, it's usually more often than not a disaster, because they just create a tag team division out of nowhere, and then there's all of a sudden nobody. But with the men's, it hasn't been that much better over the last many, many years. So that's why I wanted it Undisputed, because at least there's one championship for like 4 active teams instead of 2 championships for 4 active teams. It just is less, means it's valued more when there's only one. So, but if they're going to actually add more tag teams, more depth, that's the key here, depth of tag teams on both shows, then sure, I'm fine with splitting the championships back up. They already have 2 physical belts, easy enough, no problem there. You know, same thing. I mean, there's 2 championships for the women, right? There's now 2 championships for the men. The tag team championships could be split if they have enough depth. Yeah, that absolutely is something that can happen. So, but on a side note, why the hell haven't Bianca and Rhea Ripley swap belts yet? Do we need to even have this conversation? Like, what is going on there? I don't mean to go off topic, but like, why are we all so mystified? Why the announcers, why are they all mystified as to what's going to happen? What are we doing? Why is the SmackDown champion still on Raw and the Raw champion still on like, guys, swap the damn belts and move on. Does this need to be a big thing, or are they just trying to build to Rhea versus Bianca? I don't know. Sorry to go off topic.
No, it makes sense. And it's stupid, because did we not just go through this like 18 months ago with Becky and Charlotte? Like, it's not like this is a foreign concept. It's not foreign waters. We've been here before. We know what happens. It's an easy solution. I just feel like, and I could appreciate the fact that they're trying to slow burn Rhea and Bianca. Like, it almost feels like they're trying to build to that in a similar fashion, like they're building to Seth and Roman, where they keep dropping Easter eggs, reminding us that they have crossed paths, that they will eventually get there, but really making us want it. And hey, I'm all for long-term booking, and I do think that Rhea versus Bianca, when they do finally collide and do clash, it needs to feel special, because I think that, you know, they're the 2 top women in the company right now. I think from a physical standpoint, they're better in-ring workers than the previous 2, I guess, gatekeepers in Becky and Charlotte. Like, I don't know. Well, I guess I could ask that question quickly. Do you think Rhea and Bianca feels more important than Becky and Charlotte?
I mean, it doesn't, only because of the sense that we haven't seen Rhea and Bianca that much. So it intrigues you more than it does Becky and Charlotte. Now, is it going to be a better match? I mean, of course, better matches are always up to the person watching. It's all subjective. We've seen them battle a little bit in the past here. I remember at the Royal Rumble 2 years ago, when they were the final 2 and they put on a hell of an ending. Yeah, exactly. And I remember watching like, oh man, I can't wait till these 2 have an actual proper program. It's going to be awesome. And they haven't since then, and they've kept them apart. But right now, Bianca is not in a place where you want her to clash with Rhea. I'm not, I wouldn't say it's going to happen now, but it's certainly not the time to. While she's a top woman because she's a champion, that's why she's the top woman right now. And I mean, she's great in ring, but her character, her character needs a lot of work. It needs a change, or it needs to evolve in some way, because she is just extremely repetitive and robotic every single week. And I'm not trying to turn this into bashing Bianca. It's not what this is about. I know what she could be, and I see the potential, and it's just time to evolve. And she's just been stuck in this rut for like 6 months. And I'm telling you, if they put Rhea and Bianca together tomorrow, the fans would cheer for Rhea Ripley and boo Bianca Belair. I mean, there's just not even a question about it. I don't think.
Oh, 100%. Bianca's over as a babyface right now. And you honestly have to wonder how much more they can try and push Rhea as a heel, because the crowd just loves her. And look, as long as she's attached to Dom and with the Judgment Day, she will get those heel reactions just by association. But individually, when she's out there by herself, people want to cheer her. And Bianca Belair, and I'm with you, I really don't like slagging Bianca Belair, because I really do think she's arguably the best athlete, men or woman, that they have right now. She really is the real deal. I think she's a full-fledged main eventer, but she's been the same character for 2.5 years. Like that's just it. That's what it is. It feels like she's trending into John Cena territory. Wow, sorry. She's trending into John Cena territory, in my opinion, as just like a very good worker, a top-level talent, a main eventer for a long time here, but just in desperate need of a character shift, preferably as a heel. But even if it's not as a heel, just change something, add some more edge. Like, it doesn't, I think she should eventually turn heel, because I think her character is made for it. But even if it doesn't heel, like, there has to be more of an edge to her, if you get what I mean.
Yes, there needs to be something. And I'm an advocate for a heel turn. I think it's long overdue. I think she'd be she was heel. Don't forget, she was heel, I believe, during the pandemic in the women's division, that people forget, and she did a great job of it. And she's such an amazing worker, an amazing athlete. It's time. If you want to continue down the babyface road, go for it. But boy, does she need to add a new wrinkle. And I'm not talking about adding another skip to her step down the ramp. Okay, I don't need to see her skipping down the ramp anymore. That'd be my preference. I just, it's not my thing. And twirling her hair, I don't like that stuff. I don't care who she is or what she is. I find it a little bit, and a woman in her 30s doing that stuff is like, it's kind of like when I saw Bayley wearing pigtails or whatever she was doing. It's like, how old are we? But I understand why it's connecting with the audience. I get it, but I'm ready for Bianca to, you're right, maybe a new level of aggression. Maybe she snaps, but the heel is deserving of it, and Bianca goes too far and gets suspended because she, wrapped a chair around a heel's neck that deserved it, and something snapped inside of her. It's not going to take much to get people reinterested in Bianca, because she is a really good in-ring wrestler. She's got the look. Her athleticism's off the charts. But it's all character development right now, and it has been stagnant for a very long time, and it's fixable, it's correctable, but I don't know why they've kept her in this kind of like little safe box. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I think it's because they've just had something that worked for so long. You had a wrestler that main evented back-to-back WrestleManias. She won SmackDown World title, or SmackDown Women's title, won WrestleMania the following one. She won the Raw Women's title. One of the bigger main events that the women's division had with her and Becky. I think that it really felt like a passing of the torch in a lot of respects, much like you felt with Rhea getting the torch from Charlotte this year. Like it was almost very symbolic how in back-to-back Manias you saw two passing of the torch with two of the best women of all time. And I don't think that's a stretch to say with Becky and Charlotte. Maybe that speaks more to the scarcity of the women's division historically, but I do think that Becky and Charlotte have put themselves among the greats in the history of women's wrestling. And with them putting Rhea and Bianca over respectively in back-to-back WrestleManias, I think really kind of showed a changing of the guard in the women's division. And I understand that for WWE, maybe there's some trepidation to change something that has predominantly worked with Bianca for the better part of 2 years. But I think that over the last several, for me, it was more her build to WrestleMania with Asuka, where it became very apparent. And it's not because I don't like Bianca. On the contrary, I'm saying this because I see the talent and I know that she's a main eventer every day of the week, but she's starting to feel bland. And that's what you don't want. You have an A-plus talent here, and you'll have one for a long time. You just can't risk the fans turning on her, because she is really not once in a generation, but a one-of-a-kind talent. Like, she's in that top 1%. You just have to be careful with what you do and not to make the fans turn on her. And look at how it worked for Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley was very stale too. Think about where Rhea Ripley was 15 months ago. People forget she won the Raw Women's title, I believe, at WrestleMania 37, was it? Where she defeated Asuka? Was it that the one where there was like people in the crowd but only half capacity?
Yeah. Yep.
So people forget that she already had a shot with the Raw Women's Championship. People forget that she already was pushed to the main event and she flopped. And she really had to go through a character change, not a facelift. She kept a lot of the characteristics, but she added a new element. And now look at her. You could make the case that men or women, there's no wrestler more over right now than Rhea Ripley. And I think that there's a formula that you can maybe apply to Bianca.
It is, and maybe she needs to go through a humbling stage of, from creative anyway, going through a losing streak, testing yourself. If she goes through a losing streak or something happens to her that's traumatic in the ring, of course, story, I'm not saying an injury, but then that forces her character to change, because then you're going to get some character development here. For her, it's just go out, hit a KOD, and that's it, and see you tomorrow. And great, she's again in the ring, great, amazing. She is a future Hall of Famer, there's no question. But it's just her character needs a kick in the ass, and it needs it either into a heel category, or if you're going to go babyface, add new wrinkles, give her depth, have her go on a losing streak, create sympathy from the fans, have her, week after week saying, that, these losses are starting to get to her head and she's starting to question her ability, have the fans start to organically rally behind her, or at the very least, if you don't want to do that, show us, some more vignettes on her past, show us, I don't know, something. But it's just kind of like they're in their comfort zone with her, but that's the kiss of death. If you found the comfort zone, that means you need to move forward, because that means you've plateaued, and that's what she's done, and she can go to the next level. It doesn't look like they're even thinking about that right now, as they put her right back in a program with Asuka. So anyway, we're going to wrap things up here, but do you have any final thoughts or comments?
No, I think that we actually covered a lot today, a lot of stuff that we didn't even plan to cover, but that's a sign of a good show, right? And all I would say is I hope everyone checks out my latest episode of Retro, one of the ones that I had more fun doing, covering the history of the World Heavyweight Championship, and I hope that you're able to catch at least a bit of it, although you lived through a lot of what I had to cover.
Which made it all the more fun. I mean, because I was able to relive some of my earlier years in wrestling, and yeah, it brought back a lot of great memories. I'd recommend you guys go check it out. A new one will drop this Friday, and you guys can check that out every single Friday here on the WWE podcast. So, all right, Anthony, thanks so much for joining us tonight, and I'll catch you in a week.
Yeah, man, looking forward to it. You take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the WWE podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.